I just sometimes I'm on the road and it's hard for me to even sit down or I'll have airplane trips scheduled at the same time we do stuff. But I really don't enjoy anything more than I enjoy meeting you all in class. And also for those of you that study options with us, just so you know, I'm gonna basically incorporate more meetings in that area as well. I just started thinking about that the other day. I want to send you more fast cash action plans on ways you can make money. And also, I want to do some Q&As in the option space as well. Try to do everything that I can. Sometimes I can't do everything that I want to do. Hey, Mary, how are you? Good to see you, Mary. Mary says she's excited. Great. Well, I'm excited to see you. I don't know what you're excited about, but hey, if I'm a part of that, then that's what's up. I love that. All right. So don't forget, everybody, the All Black National Convention is August 21st through the 23rd. I had Dr. Ken Harris on earlier today, and he just lit it up. He's an amazing guy, and he runs the National Business League, and he was there today, and we were just sort of talking about the vision for this year's convention, which is really, in my view, going to be the best Black business convention you've ever seen ever. I can't think of any space where you had thousands of people that look like us that were trying to specifically and strictly focus building for the Black community. Unfortunately, in many cases, a lot of gatherings tend to be focused on connecting, trying to get relationships with the people outside of our community. And not that that's not important, but I don't think anybody outside of our community is going to really help us get what we really need. It's up to you to decide if you agree with me or not. But I personally think that I will say this. I'm kind of a no nonsense person in the sense that if something doesn't look like it's going to work, I don't want to do it. I'm not big on symbolism. Life is too short for me to waste my time doing something stupid just because everybody else is doing it. And so I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have been partnering with the National Business League if I did not think it was going to make a real difference in the lives of real people in a real way. And so a difference means it's very simple. My criteria is extremely simple. Is it going to put more money in the pockets of Black people? I don't want more feel good moments or more symbolism. I want to see things that are going to put money in your pocket because I know that that's what you want. I know that's what you need. I know that's what will liberate you. And in fact, actually, that's what I'm proudest of with our Prime program, drboyceprime.com. I see you all literally making real money from this. Like it's not hocus pocus. I'm a professor. I can't just talk about flashy stuff that doesn't work. This is real stuff. And also, the other criteria I have is are people going to be happier? Is your life going to be better as a result? And I think that if you use simple criteria like that, are we going to be more educated? Are we mentally and physically healthier? Does it strengthen our families? If the answer is yes, then I'm in. But if the answer is no, I'm not in. I'm not here to sit around and just barking about how mad I am at white people or just talk about things that aren't going to work or pie in the sky stuff. That's another thing that happens a lot. A lot of times, I think we overwhelm ourselves with our solutions being so broad and so vast, and so just sort of like, okay, I got this $10 billion plan that's going to resurrect the entire Black community. Well, it's hard to have a $10 billion plan if you don't have $10 in the bank account, right? I mean, if you can't get $10,000 together, then why are we talking about 10 billion? I want to know your $10,000 plan. That's what I want to know. Like, what's the $10,000 plan that you have to not save the whole Black community, but to save yourself, to save that woman that you're with, to save those children that you're with, to save the people around you. If you show me your $10,000 plan, that impresses me more than a $10 billion plan. $10 billion plans are pie in the sky. $10,000 plans are very real. It has a real impact on your life. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for your $1 billion plan. I want to hear your $10,000 plan so that you can actually do something that succeeds and actually wins. For example, the Black Business School, now it's a multi-million dollar plan. Now we have a multi-million dollar budget. But at one point, the Black Business School was my $1,000 plan. That was my $5,000 plan, right? And I was going to pour into it with brain power and time and energy and consistency. And then it became a $1 million plan. And eventually it'll be $1 billion plan, a multi-billion dollar plan, because we've already, speaking of plan, we did make the estate plan and I put together the board and the vision, the long-term vision and the mission of the institution so that 150 years from now, people won't have any question at all about what Dr. Boyce believed in, what he represented, and what we were doing in this generation. So what's your $10,000 plan and what's your 100-year plan? If you don't have that yet, I encourage you to put something like that together because Black history isn't just meant to be studied. Black history is meant to be made. Give me a yes if you agree. Let me know if you agree with that. And by the way, some of you were asking about stock options. How do we study that? You can actually Sorry, you can actually go to drboyceprime.com if you want to be a part of the stock options class. That's drboyceprime.com. All right, so I'm going to read from Dr. Claude Anderson's book. The book is called Dirty Little Secrets, and that's the book that we're on. We've already finished. My foot is itching. Can y'all forgive me? Is that ghetto if I stop and scratch my big toe? It's real weird. It's like really itching. Anyway, so Dirty Little Secrets is the fourth book, I think, from Dr. Anderson. We read, yeah, so fourth book. We covered Powernomics. We covered Black Labor, White Wealth. We covered the Black History Reader. Dr. Claude Anderson's website is powernomics.com. So if you want to take a look at his books, go to powernomics.com. Get them for your children. Your children should be reading what this man has written. He worked very, very hard on these books. So we're not going to let them go to waste. All right. So here on page 32 of the book, Dirty Little Secrets, the section is called Heroes But Not Citizens. It says the Revolutionary War, the first major conflict between this land and a foreign power, generated heroes from the ranks of blacks, both free and slave. In the 1780s, just before the Revolutionary War, the slave Thomas Peters became a black military legend. Peters and 20,000 other black slaves sided with the British during the war in hopes of gaining their freedom. Peters was an excellent soldier who received many accolades, but when his side went down to defeat, so did his hopes for freedom. A few years later, in 1788, a black slave named Dick Pointer saved the lives of many white settlers one early morning at Fort Donnelly, Virginia, by single-handedly holding off a surprise Indian attack until the garrison awoke and came to his aid. Louis Pacquiao was another little-known black slave-turned-hero of the Third Seminole War. Not only did he get revenge for his enslavement, but he exacted it against a famous military leader, Major Francis Dade of the United States Army. Pacquiao was a runaway slave who had joined the Seminole Indians in Florida. He convinced the military that he could be trusted to guide them to various Indian and black rebel hideouts. Instead, Pacquiao led Dade into a trap in Florida. Pacquiao led Major Dade and sent his troops, his hundreds of troops and Creek Indians into the swamps where Chief Osceola and his men were waiting in ambush. Pacquiao's plan was so well executed that only 4 of Dade's men survived what was later termed a massacre. Wow, so he set these dudes up. Pacquiao's allies, other black runaways and Seminole Indians, honored him as a hero. Numerous other blacks also emerged from the 3 Seminole Wars as heroes. John Caesar, a black slave in South Carolina, was a double hero for saving lives in South Carolina with his medical cures and for taking lives as a warrior in Florida. In the 19th century, Caesar developed antidotes for several poisons. For his medical achievements, his home state of South Carolina granted him meritorious manumission. If you remember that was a reward given to slaves from enslavement, as well as 100 pounds in cash. Several years later, in the 1820s, Caesar joined the struggle of runaway slaves and Indians in Florida. Within a short time, he became a feared and valiant black warrior. He was the leader within the Seminole tribe and led raids on plantations in border states to free and recruit slaves into the cause. His raids focused national attention that eventually brought an end to the Seminole War. Like so many other runaway slaves, John Caesar was a hero and role model of black leadership. Now, these names, give me a yes or no. Yes or no. How many of you have heard of any of these people? Has anybody heard of Dick Pointer? Anybody heard the name Dick Pointer? And did you learn that in school? Louis Pacquiao, Pacheo. Yes or no? Anybody ever heard that name? This is just us pointing out how horrible the educational system is. Has anybody ever heard of, let's see, is it John Caesar? John Caesar, I mean, you had to have heard of John Caesar. He was a black slave in South Carolina who was saving lives with medical cures. Anybody heard of John Caesar? Did your public school teach you about him? Okay. All right. So we are all adequately, severely undereducated. All right, a time for slave revolts. Many students of human behavior and historians have wondered why black slaves suffered such inhumane treatment for so many centuries and attempted so few revolts. People do not typically revolt when conditions are so oppressive that they have no hope of succeeding. The slavery system was comprehensive and effective. They were not only heavily outnumbered, but they had no weapons to speak of or training to use them. So you had no weapons, no training, and you were also severely outnumbered. Wow. Confined to plantations, they had little knowledge of the physical terrain of the South, so you didn't know your terrain. Few could read or write. Their skin color made them highly visible targets for the white militia that controlled the roads at night and day to quell potential unrest. So they had you on lockdown. Most of the North was still allied with the Southern slaveholders. So even your allies were working with the South. That's why you ain't got no allies. And blacks did not have irate African nations crossing the Atlantic seeking revenge and to free their enslaved people. So there was nobody in Africa coming to get you. So nobody in Africa was coming to get you. Your allies didn't want to help you. They had you on lockdown. You didn't have the tools to liberate yourself. You didn't know how to use them if you even had them. Yeah, you were outnumbered. And also, what else? Few of us could read or write. So here's the deal, right? So this is interesting because this talks about liberation. The slaves were not able to really liberate or revolt. Largely, it seems because they had no support and they had no tools of liberation. Right. And now this is interesting to me because this actually relates to why so many of our people are enslaved, and so many young people are going to be enslaved because their parents made them fit for slavery. Their parents prepared them to be good slaves. Well, why would you say that, Boyce? Well, let me explain. Well, if your parents really wanted to liberate you, then they would be good allies. If your parents really wanted to liberate you, they would be allies that prepared you for the future financially. I was sitting today with a brother named Ben Watson. Ben Watson played for the New England Patriots. He's a smart guy and a good brother. And we did an interview together. And I talked about him and his children. And I said, you have these children. They already love each other. They're already connected to one another. You have a multi-million dollar empire just in those relationships right there. I said, now you being the head of the household and your wife being the queen of the household, you can be excellent allies for these children by giving them the tools for liberation. You give them some capital, which you're going to do, but then you have to give them knowledge and you have to give them values and principles and standards. You have to give them a code of conduct. You have to give them a blueprint. You got to give them a game plan. Do you understand? Just like if I go open a McDonald's franchise, McDonald's is a franchisee, they're going to give me the blueprint. They're going to give me access to some real estate. They're going to help me get some supplies. They're going to show me how to make a cheeseburger. They're going to show me how to run the operation. They're going to give me the blueprint for success. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying? So the question I ask you, black people, seriously, in this room right now, because we're talking about why they had us enslaved, because we had no weapons, didn't know how to use them, had no allies, had no game plan. What is the game plan for liberation? What is the game plan when it comes to your kids? What is the game plan to make sure that your baby ain't 20 years from now out begging some white man to take care of him because his own family wouldn't even do it? See, the slaves couldn't do what they wanted to do because even the people that were supposed to look out for them wasn't looking out for them. The African countries, African nations did not send one single ship to America saying, "Give us back our people. We're here to fight we're here to fight to get back the people that you took." Not one African nation did that. White liberals up in the North, who were supposed to be our allies, would sell us out for two nickels and a fur skin coat. They didn't care about us. They were working. They were profiting from our enslavement too. Oh, they only wanted us liberated in theory. They didn't really want us actually moving in, right? So they had no allies, they had no tools, and they had no skills to be liberated. They didn't know the terrain, they didn't know how to use the weapons, they didn't have a battle plan. So my point is to say this. This is the connection I want to make. Just tell me you get it so I can move on, because y'all know how I get. I gotta make sure we hammer the point down until it's done. Look at how many of our people don't know the first thing about self-reliance. Look at how many people of our people just don't have a damn clue. Literally, when I talk to them about being like free, economically free and etc., they're like, "How am I supposed to do that? I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Well, the reason they can't do it is for the same reason the slaves couldn't get off the plantation. You have no allies, meaning family is supposed to be your ally. You have no allies. You have no tools, which would be capital, things like that. And then even if you get the tools and you have the allies, if you don't know how to use them, then you're done. So that's what you must do. You must do the opposite of slavery to obtain freedom. The opposite would mean, look, I got a child. I'm going to be a hell of an ally for you. I'm going to be such an ally that I'm already planning to make sure that you're going to be okay. I'm saving for you. I'm investing for you. I'm teaching you. I'm loving you. I'm being there for you. And I'm building something around you, some sort of structure around you. I'm going to love your mother the best I can so we can work together to make sure you're protected. And then on top of that, we're going to give you tools to be successful. We're going to give you some resources, some money. But then after that, we're going to give you the most important part, which is skills and discipline and value systems that will allow you to manage and to keep whatever we build for you. And because here's the deal, like when I was talking to Ben, I said you can leave them a bunch of money, but if they're raised to be knuckleheads, all they're gonna do is blow it because that's what the culture tells them to do. So be a good ally to your children. Don't leave them out here for don't you can't abandon people. We got stranded. I'm still mad at those African countries. Why didn't y'all come get us? Anyway, let's keep going. All right. So he says here, even though slaves often considered themselves little more than the working dead, they knew that a failed revolt meant certain death. In both direct and indirect ways, many slaves found ways to resist, even under the most treacherous of circumstances. Most slaves were so overwhelmed by the magnitude of their situation that they preferred to withdraw from reality or psychologically join their white oppressor. At a subtle level of resistance, slaves nonetheless responded to white oppression by feigning illness, crippling themselves. They would cripple themselves. Oh my gosh. Committing suicide, poisoning their masters, and setting fire to the properties on which they labored. More aggressive slaves escaped to maroon settlements and Indian communities in the wilderness where they often plotted against their oppressors. Maroons were groups of escaped slaves who established their own communities. They routinely traded slave plantations for food, supplies, and to live. They routinely raided slave plantations for food supplies and to liberate other slaves. That's what I'm talking about. I want to be maroon. We got a little maroon plantation up in here because we're gonna go raid the plantation. We're gonna go get what we need. While most slave revolts in America were small and ineffective, at least three chilled the hearts of Southerners. The three key revolts were led by Gabriel Prosser in 1800, Denmark Vesey in 1822, and Nat Turner in 1831. These revolts set the stage for the ultimate revolt, the Civil War of the 1860s, that ended slavery as an institution. So these three revolts, Prosser, Vesey, and Turner, happened within a 31-year period where people were getting tired of it. And then that led to the ultimate revolt, which was in 1865 or the 1860s. Slave couple couldn't wait. That's what this chapter is called. He says, many slaves took to heart a challenge from abolitionists that they should seize every opportunity using any means necessary to break free. Mark and Phyllis were slaves owned by John Cottam of Charleston, South Carolina, who grew tired of their chains. Learning that Codman had granted their freedom in his will upon their death, they decided not to wait. There was always the possibility, after all, that he might outlive them both. Taking matters into their own hands, they poisoned Codman, but their plot was uncovered by white neighbors. For killing a white man, Mark was hanged and Phyllis was burned alive. They were said to have died believing, however, that they had done the right thing, which they did. Other slaves would continue to adhere to the belief that desperate times call for desperate measures. God, they believed, helps those who help themselves. So your ancestors did not sit down and take it. They actually fought back. A song of slave revolts. It was a capital offense not only for a slave to plan or participate in a revolt, but to even imagine it. Rigid measures were taken to block the access of slaves to any tool or resource that could conceivably be used as a weapon. What slaves lacked in means to revolt, they made up for in spirit and determination. They dreamed about slave heroes. The following song captures this spirit and desire for freedom. Okay, I've never heard this song. Arise, arise, shake off your chains. Your cause is just, so heaven ordains. To you shall freedom be proclaimed. Raise your arms and bear your breast. Almighty God will do the rest. Blow the clarion's warlike blast. Call every Negro from his task. Wrest the scourge from Buckra's hand and drive each tyrant from the land. Firm, united, let us be, resolved on death or liberty. As a band of patriots joined, peace and plenty we shall find. Wow, that's powerful. Raise your arms and bare your breast. Almighty God will do the rest. Blow the clarion's warlike blast. Call every Negro from his task. Wrest the scourge from Buckra's hand and drive each tyrant from the land. Firm, united, let us be, resolved on death or liberty. As a band of patriots joined, peace and plenty we shall find. So that speaks of Black unity. I'm picking up liberty or death. Firm, united, drive the tyrants from the land. Call every Negro from his task. That means call y'all Negroes from your jobs. Blow the clarion's warlike blast. Raise your arms and bare your breast. Almighty God will do the rest. I believe in that. I believe in that. Every day I get up, I say, "Hey, I'm trying to just get things started. God's gonna handle the rest." Wow, I love that. Okay, so let's go to 1800. Let's read about the Prosser Conspiracy. The Gabriel Prosser Conspiracy was one of the nation's most carefully planned insurrections. Inspired by the successful Haitian revolt at the turn of the 19th century, Gabriel Prosser, a 24-year-old rebel slave, sounded the dawning of the new age of rebellion in America. After months of planning, Prosser proposed leading a slave revolt against the city of Richmond, Virginia, in August of 1800. The Black insurrectionists were instructed on how to gather and use clubs, swords, and other objects as weapons. Prosser's intentions were to divide his rebel force into three columns: one to attack the penitentiary, which was being used as an arsenal, a second to capture the power station, and a third to attack the city itself. If the citizenry refused to surrender, the rebel leader planned to kill all the whites. He would grant an exception to those who he had felt had been somewhat kind to blacks, primarily Quakers, Methodists, and Frenchmen. The rebels aimed to gather large supplies of guns and powder and capture the state treasury. They calculated that when this had been accomplished, they would control the resources to hold off counterattacks for several weeks. They hoped word of the slave revolt would then spread across the country and that slaves from the surrounding territory would arrive to fortify their ranks. Good luck with that, man. That's, good luck with that. With a large enough revolt, they felt whites would have little choice but to come to terms with their demand for emancipation. On the day of the revolt, however, a severe Virginia storm washed out bridges and roads, making it impossible for the 1,200 plus revolutionaries to get to the gathering point. When only 300 slaves showed up at the designated time, Prosser temporarily postponed the rebellion. On the morning of August 30th, before Prosser could reschedule the undertaking, he was betrayed. Surprise, surprise. Two Richmond slaves, Tom and Pharaoh, informed their masters about Prosser's plans. Once exposed, Prosser and 35 of his compatriots had little chance to escape. They were quickly surrounded, arrested, and tried. As was to be expected, Prosser and his fellow slaves were found guilty of revolting for freedom and executed. Long after Prosser was hanged, rumors hinted that between 2,000 and 50,000 slaves were ready to join his uprising. Many slaveholders were puzzled about the size of Prosser's conspiracy and why so many slaves were willing to join. One theory suggested the Virginia state seal, which depicted the mythological Virtus standing over a conquered tyrannus, had also motivated Prosser's support. The image on the seal, when impressed on dark wax, could be interpreted as a freed slave standing triumphant over his master. Believing his state seal had motivated blacks to revolt, many plantation owners hired guards at the Capitol and changed the official seal. Very interesting. Wow. Oof. Oof. Wow. The Denmark Vesey uprising. In 1822, a few years after the Prosser conspiracy, Denmark Vesey, a militant free black, organized a revolt in Charleston, South Carolina. Vesey had purchased his own freedom for $600, which came from $1,500 in lottery winnings. He was refused permission, however, to purchase the freedom of his children. Fueled by the anger that his children, not to mention his race, were mere chattel, Vesey vowed not to accept the self-mocking, acquiescing behavior expected of slaves. He demanded that blacks display racial pride and courage. When he saw Charleston slaves bow, tip their hats, and step into the street gutters to make way for whites, he screamed, "You deserve to be slaves." To express his anger in a more productive forum, Vesey became a Methodist minister who preached racial solidarity and freedom to his fellow blacks. Drawing on the texts of the Declaration of Independence in the Old Testament, in his sermons, he admonished against inequality and urged slaves to resist their masters. So vehement were Vesey's arguments that some of his followers feared Vesey more than their masters or even God. Vesey planned his uprising for nearly 4 years, patiently working out the details. He was well aware that several past revolts had gone awry when blacks squealed to their masters. To decrease that possibility, he let it be known that he will personally deal with any slave who betrayed him. But even with all of Vesey's threats, house slaves informed their white masters of Vesey's planned revolt, not once but twice. Vesey never had even had a chance to carry out his threat of, quote, breaking the neck of any slave who informed on him, end quote. Based upon the word of slave informers, white authorities arrested and executed Vesey and 37 of his followers. Another 30 lesser participants were deported to the Caribbean for reconditioning. Reconditioning. Wow. For Vesey, death was probably preferable to living with the knowledge that two of his own people personally profited from selling him down the river. For their treachery, the informers received meritorious manumission and monetary rewards. So they were rewarded financially for snitching on Denmark Vesey. How many of y'all feel like we still have that going on today? How many of y'all feel like today we still got a class of black people that will gladly go and dismantle anything they see sort of that is built upon some sort of revolution for black people. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's really funny. I just even think about when I was in the academy, when I was at Syracuse University. I remember I wasn't well received by a lot of black scholars. I wasn't, and I didn't understand what it was. I was nice to people. I didn't mistreat others that I met in person. But for whatever reason, I think because I scared them or they felt like they would lose their job by being my friend, you get betrayed a lot. Like, and it's hard. It's really difficult to deal with the scared Negro. I guess we got lots of them everywhere. Fear is a contagious virus, and maybe one day they'll come up with a vaccine. But at the end of the day, it's very interesting when you do have this sort of overseer class of black people, and their specific job is to protect their own interests by sort of squashing anything that even approaches some sort of black self-reliance, right? Any form of anything that encourages black people to disconnect from the system, they get rewarded by sort of keeping you in that system, and I don't think that that's healthy for anybody. So without necessarily talking about at a point now who those people might be, I think that it's very important for us to at least consider and think about how many so-called black liberation institutions are actually run and owned and controlled by white people. Look at how many HBCUs can't even shape their own destiny. Right now FAMU is upset because their new president was pretty much picked by the Republican Party. Well, the question is so I want to ask you this. We know that the Republicans probably did pick FAMU's president. I want to ask you a question. Can black people go and pick the president of Harvard? Can we go to Yale and say we're gonna handpick the person that's going to be running your institution? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, why is the answer no? How is it that they can run into our space and our institution, pick our leaders, but we can't go in their space and their institutions and pick their leaders? Well, a lot of that comes back to economic sovereignty. It comes back to economic power. It comes back to the question of whether or not you truly control your institutions. But ownership requires sacrifice. Control requires sacrifice and commitment and patience. So even if you have something that's not that big, even if it takes you 20 years to build that black-owned business when you could have just got that real fancy job, the reality is that you have to pay a cost to be the boss. That fake power is not the same as real power. So at FAMU, when I see FAMU's president being picked by people who don't even care about the students at FAMU, that tells me who's really running that fucking place. Excuse my French. We know who's running FAMU. It ain't you. If you sitting out in the stands complaining and yelling and screaming about it and you can't do nothing about it, then you obviously are not running the thing. Because people that have the real power don't even talk. They just do. They just say, okay, let's remove this person and put this person in there. The people who don't have power, they scream, this is an outrage. This is wrong. You doing us dirty. That's wrong, y'all. Well, you could. I don't know what the answer in that case would be, and it's certainly not meant to disparage FAMU. I think it's an excellent institution for the most part. What I'm saying though is that you have to really be able to discern the difference between institutions that are truly black owned versus those that have just black figureheads, right? And it doesn't mean every black person's on the same page. Not every black person's on the same agenda. But I would be disappointed if FAMU was run by either the Republicans or the Democrats. Replacing a black Republican with a black Democrat still tells me you don't run your shit. You don't own that school. That's not your school. That belong maybe it belongs to the Democratic Party. So you're really choosing the better master. Which master do you want? And my belief, my humble, perhaps naive expectation is that at some point we'll say, no, I want to be the master of my own fate. We can run this dang thing. We can make that final decision. And it's going to take some investment to make that happen. To really own and run institutions, you got to be willing to invest. You can't just show up for the rewards. You got to make the sacrifice. When I talk about the power of the NFL and how we have so few black people that are able to own large percentages of NFL teams, we're the ones playing on the field, but we're not making the billions that come from owning the league, even though we bring all the talent to the table. Well, I always tell people, go back and look at the history of the NFL. Go back and look at the people who humbly sat there and created these little worthless football teams like the New York Giants that they couldn't even sell for $200. But they poured into that. They invested in that. They sacrificed for that. They had patience. They spent 50, 60, 70 years to build that. It took them 2, 3 decades to get something that was worth having. And because they could have taken the shortcut, they could have just attached themselves to something that was built and created by somebody else. That feels good. You get to be flashy, you get to show off and tell everybody, what you have. You get to be like LeBron. LeBron's mama was dating this dude who would go and like when he was dating LeBron's mama, he would stand in front of LeBron's yacht and take a selfie in front of the yacht, like he owned it. But he ain't on that damn yacht. You didn't shoot no jumpers in the gym. You didn't, that's not your yacht. But he's taking the picture because he wanted to look like the guy who owned the yacht. Right? And that's what we get. We get people that don't really want to work hard to own the yacht. We have people that want to pretend to be the person that owns the yacht. So you want to pretend to be the HNIC when really you're not. Really, you're not the shareholder. You're not the major investor. You're not the financial backer of that institution. Go find something of your own size where you can say, look, I'm really the boss of this. Like I'm gonna tell you, the Black Business School ain't, when we started off in the beginning, we wasn't much, but it was mine. Now we're a little bit more than much. We have a few 100,000 students, and we've impacted a lot of people around the world because I've invested in this thing every single freaking day. But it's ours. We get to make when they want to make a decision, they say, Boyce, what do you think? I say, do this, don't do this. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard. I have to make tremendous financial investments. I can't be the flashy Negro on the block. I can't. You're not gonna see me walking down the street in a Gucci belt, driving a Rolls Royce, because that capital I get, I'm pouring it back into an institution. Or the same thing, but that's not just true for a business. It's true for a family. You have a chance to reproduce with a woman or with a man and have these children. Well, that's your little empire. You can build that, but you got to invest in that. You make the kids and then you raise the kids and you pour into the kids. And then when they become big and strong and successful, you get to say, I'm calling the shots up in here. This is our space. This space belongs to us. Why? Because we built it. It's hard to own it if you didn't birth it. And unfortunately, for many of our HBCUs, we did not birth those institutions. We do not pay the bills of those institutions. The endowment, if it's $1 billion, is that really our money, or did that money come from the state, or come from some white benefactors, or people like that? Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not making fun of them, but what I'm saying is you have to know the difference when it comes to calibers. There's tiers to this. There's tiers to ownership. There's tiers to control. There's tiers to liberation and freedom. Because I don't care what you say. When the rubber meets the road, the person who is going to make the decision is the one who writes the damn check. And if you're not the person writing the check, then any power that you claim to have is typically going to be power that is only granted to you by the person who really does write the check. So anyway, let me keep reading here. I hope that that makes sense. I didn't mean to cuss. I said two cuss words, but that stuff just makes me mad. It just like, all that trying to be flashy stuff is just goofy. Even when Diddy, anybody remember when Diddy pretended to own that liquor brand and he didn't own nothing? He wasn't nothing but a mascot. That's a typical thing that happens where they'll put somebody up there and we'll say that's black ownership, y'all. I'm like, that ain't no damn ownership. Because if he owned it, he'd be able to hire 10,000 black people to run the distillery. He can't do none of that. You're a mascot, dude. That's what you are. I mean, that's just what it is. And that's not a win for the whole community. That's a win for him. All right, that's how he afforded all that damn baby oil. All right, so let's read about Nat Turner. Nat Turner, Sword of God, page 37. The book is called Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson on powernomics.com. Of all the slave revolts, Nat Turner's was without a doubt the best known. In August 1831, Turner and about 70 other black slaves began their long planned insurrection. The charismatic slave believed that the voice of God had instructed him to commence a death march across Virginia and the South to free 4 million black slaves. If necessary, he felt his band was justified in killing every white person who crossed his path. Woo! Nat Turner began the killing with his own master, then proceeded from farm to farm. Within a few days, he and his co-conspirators had raided several plantations and butchered no less than 55 whites. Ooh, this is getting heavy. I don't know if I can read this on YouTube. We might have to go into a private space or something because this is getting heavy. The word of Turner's revolt immediately spread across the nation, throwing the white population into a panic. Many whites packed their families into buggies and fled Virginia and neighboring states. Haiti's successful slave revolt, which by this time was well known, made Turner's uprising white America's worst nightmare. Well, you shouldn't have made us slaves, and you wouldn't have to deal with this now, would you? To slave owners, Turner represented an out of control, avenging black boogeyman. The federal government placed the United States Marines on alert. For 2 full months, thousands of state reserves and militia members scoured the states for Turner's small but mighty gang of revolutionary slaves. Furious that slaves had the nerve to actually take up arms against them, white vigilante mobs roamed the countryside, assaulting and slaughtering free or bonded blacks. In some cases, entire black families, women and children included, were massacred. Wow. Business and property owners conducted economic reprisals by refusing to employ free blacks or rent them homes or farmlands. Since whites controlled private property, indeed the entire economy, their actions had serious repercussions on the black population. Turner's small army was eventually located, surrounded, and defeated. Turner and his men attempted counterattacks but were vastly outnumbered. After going into hiding and eluding capture, he was finally discovered in a cave, arrested without resistance, tried, and hanged. Nat Turner had responded to the prolonged suffering of his people. At his trial, the black warrior looked at the sea of hostile white faces and said, quote, I do not feel any guilt for what I have done. Let God judge my acts. His earthly judges found him guilty of seeking freedom. He was hanged and decapitated. Whew. Mm. Oh my goodness. I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling Nat Turner in here, right? I'm feeling like that hit me. Oh man, give me a second. All right, let me keep. I'm just gonna keep on reading because I can't even explain how I'm feeling right now. Yeah, I'm feeling. Ooh, I don't know how. I'm not. I don't. I'm feeling emotional from reading that. That's very emotional. That was heavy for me. That was because I think I might be an empath or something because I could feel him right there, and I'm whispers from a Caribbean nation. Toussaint Louverture, a former carriage driver. See, I'm sorry. See, daggone it, boys. Ugh. Sorry, guys. Give me a second. All right. Yeah, I'm feeling the energy of him from what he, man, that was, all right. Okay. Clean up my face here. I'm gonna focus. All right. Toussaint Louverture, a former carriage driver and natural military genius, led the slaves of Haiti and the Dominican Republic in a rebellion against Napoleon of France at the end of the 1700s. Napoleon and his army suffered a stunning defeat. This was the only time in the development of the Western world that white Europeans blinked and blacks seized their freedom. More than 60,000 blacks and whites perished in Louverture's rebellion, creating Haiti as a republic of freed slaves. Following Napoleon's defeat, France sent troops to Haiti to negotiate a peace treaty. Although they had been militarily trounced, French treachery was still alive and well. French military officials, displaying the flag of truce, managed to lure Louverture to their Haitian headquarters, where they arrested him in 1802. He died in jail in the Alps in 1803. To stave off a chain reaction of black revolts in the United States, slaveholders tried in vain to keep the news of the Haitian revolt from the ears of black slaves. Louverture had made an impact. Reportedly, quote, wherever slaves chafed under chains, this man's name was whispered. Oh man. Oof. This is something else. I'm gonna drink some water. I hope that's okay. This is I don't know why. I'm feeling the ancestors right now. Oh, you know what really bothers me? What really gets me is they made these tremendous sacrifices for us. Like they sacrificed so much for us. And we sitting here in our comfortable little lives and not having to die to be free. You ain't got to die to win. You just got to fight. And they were facing death. And they stood up in the face of death with relentless courage. I mean, they had fearlessness in the face of death. That is as honorable as you can get. And I think at the very least we can do is run that baton across the finish line. They died passing you that baton. They died opening doors for you. The least we can do is run the damn thing to the finish line and finish the job. All right. This is chapter 3, page 41 of Dirty Little Secrets. The book can be found at powernomics.com. It's by Dr. Claude Anderson. And he gives a series of mini facts. This chapter is called Freedmen and Free Labor. We make distinctions without making differences. So a mini fact he gives is that from the 15th to 19th centuries, a black Holocaust was carried out. Two-thirds of the 35 million slaves shipped out of Africa died en route to the Americas. That's over 20 million people. Now remember, World War II, we know that the Nazis took out what about 6 million? Well, we lost over 20 million and then had tens of millions more that suffered after they got here. Two-thirds of the 35 million slaves shipped out of Africa died en route to the Americas. Neither an apology nor reparations have been offered to the victimized black race. In 1787, the first Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia to draft a constitution that codified slavery and equated blacks to three-fifths of a human being. Following suit, the new Congress enacted the first immigration bill that placed a zero quota on black immigrants. So they were letting immigrants in, but they weren't letting black people in. They had a quota of zero for black people, but they would let everybody else in. At a Berlin conference in 1876, European governments arbitrarily divided up the entire African continent into colonies and then exploited them until they were the most economically impoverished nations on earth. In the 1860s, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution was enacted to give blacks due process rights. Yet, for nearly a century afterward, the Supreme Court ruled against every due process rights case involving blacks. Very, very heavy. I think that our Holocaust needs to be acknowledged. I think that we don't, um, I mean, not to say that other people haven't suffered too. I don't want to get into the oppression Olympics, but I think that the Black Holocaust needs to be remembered. They tell everybody else never forget. Well, you should never forget what we went through because y'all, half of us done forgot. That's not appropriate. Also this Friday, by the way, we're doing a Black movie night. Marcus Small is going to show his film, The Melanin Code, and he's going to show it for free for Black business school students. So if you want to be invited, make sure you're on the text list for the Black Business School. Just text the word morning, MORNING, to the phone number 87948. Text morning to 87948, and you'll hear from me every morning. We teach every single morning for free to anybody that wants to listen. Third, I want to remind everybody that the All Black National Convention is going to be happening in Atlanta, August 21st through the 23rd. And it's going to be the biggest, blackest convention that you've ever seen in your life. There is not, to my knowledge, any other Black business event of this magnitude where the sole objective is to collectively work together to build for the Black community. And so we're really proud of it. We're going to have thousands of people there. There are 6 African presidents that are bringing their delegations to the convention, hundreds of Black chambers of commerce, university presidents are going to be there, and you're invited too. So if you want to join us at the convention, you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. So the National Business League, started by Booker T. Washington, is our partner. And as you can see, it's an extraordinary event with intelligent people like Dr. George C. Frazier. We have so many people that come together and they build. It's just building the next generation. It's very family oriented, very educational oriented. We work on every issue that affects our community, from health to wealth to relationships. We bring together Black PhDs, Black therapists, African American attorneys, real estate experts, financial experts, artificial intelligence experts. And this year is going to be the biggest event that we've ever had. This is going to have thousands and thousands of our people gathered together to build up for our people. That's LeVar Scott. He's a NASCAR driver. He was there. Ben Watson, the guy I told you, who played for the New England Patriots. He's a great brother who's doing great work. He's going to be there this year. And we have a lot of other, Chris Broussard, who's on Fox Sports every morning. He's going to be one of our keynotes. He's a strong brother that represents Black men and Black people very, very well. He has a strong Black family. That's what we believe in. And so if you want to join us at the ABNC, All Black National Convention, you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. And we are going to have a ball. And then also in the fall, we're going to do the B1 Awards. There's Brother Nuri Muhammad. So we've had some really amazing people there, and it's really a great experience. It's not just, see, we have fun too. So it's fun. That's my wife acting a fool. But so we have the ball, but there's also lots of learning, lots of connecting, and it's just a great experience. And bring your kids. It's a family-oriented event. So make sure you bring your whole family. So allblacknationalconvention.com. That's where you can go get your passes. All right. So let me jump into the next stage of this and finish. It's going to be in Atlanta, by the way, August 21st to the 23rd. All right. So Dr. Anderson, on page 41 of his book, Dirty Little Secrets. Now, y'all were able to see that, right? Let me know if you were able to see that. Were y'all able to see that? That okay, yeah, yeah. Khabibi says it's a real black family reunion. Yeah, yeah, I know Khabibi comes in. Yeah, are the children half price? I think we should have children's tickets on there. I gotta double check that. I don't think this year though we're able to do a children's ticket, but I can double check. We'll work something out on that. I gotta go check with the team. But yeah, it's amazing. Like it'll be the best. I guarantee you, it'll be the best convention you've ever gone to. All right, so he asked this question at the bottom. He says, "What is a slave?" A slave is a person owned by another person, has no rights, and works without pay. The word slave was originally applied to a European ethnic group. According to the encyclopedia, it came from the word Slav, a Russian people captured by the Germans. Other sources say the word Slav originally meant the people of glory and suggested some kind of religious identification or purification. In any event, the last enslavement of European whites occurred in the 14th century when Arabs held the Mamelukes in captivity. Ancient slavery was an individual matter, resulting from a war, religious differences, or personal indebtedness. But in any of these instances, enslavement was based on a power relationship between the slave and the master that allowed the slave to earn his freedom eventually. In ancient slavery, intermediaries such as the Catholic Church protected the rights and property of the enslaved and required the master to pay quote unquote freedom dues to the slave upon his release. So when the slave was released, the slave would get some sort of money to be able to operate in a free society. The modern enslavement of blacks was different. Black slavery was a new socioeconomic system. Unlike all previous forms of enslavement, black enslavement was based upon, quote, the accident of skin color, end quote. Further, for the first time in the history of mankind, all formal religions, nations, and ethnic groups collectively moved against and supported the enslavement of black people. These first time occurrences against blacks at the same time the rest of the world was exposing or espousing the concepts of freedom, liberty, and equality for all men led to the enslavement being called a peculiar institution. Perhaps another reason it was called a peculiar institution was because it marked the beginning of Europe's social engineering of the black race. Before the diaspora, a scattering of African blacks, Europeans considered black Africans to be exotic, exciting, but not necessarily inferior. As more and more European nations became slave traders and began to enjoy the wealth that it produced, Europeans came to classify Africans as stupid, uncivilized, and less than human. They used all reasoning at their disposal to justify why whites treated blacks like no other human beings on earth. So that's the origin of slavery. That's where it came from. That's why American slavery was different from slavery that had been done previously in other nations. Blacks were here before the Mayflower. The first blacks arrived in America much earlier than typically reported in history books, probably as early as 1526. In the summer of 1526, 500 Spaniards and 100 black slaves founded a town near the mouth of the PD River in what is now South Carolina. Most of the members of this group were killed off by diseases and fights with local Indians. Matters worsened for the Spaniards when in November of the same year the slaves rebelled, killed many of their white masters, and escaped into the wilderness to live with the Indians. The approximately 150 remaining Spaniards then abandoned the settlement and retreated to Haiti. The black slaves that they left behind undoubtedly joined and interbred with the local Indian tribes. Their mixed offspring awaited the arrival of the European settlers who came nearly a century later. A public edict laid the foundation for racism. This is interesting. Before the Maryland colony came into existence in 1634, newly arrived European whites and African blacks intermingled and socialized reasonably well. In 1638, however, the Maryland colony issued a public edict encouraging a separation of the races. It became the basis of public policy for race relations in America. The Council for the Maryland Colony Edict stated that, quote, neither the existing black population, their descendants, nor any other blacks, shall be permitted to enjoy the fruits of white society, end quote. The public edict later became more commonly known as the doctrine of exclusion. So that's when it began in Maryland. They decided, hey, let's just make a law and just say, if you're black, you can't be free. Because you're black, you're going to be a slave. That's it. And that became the law of the land. So this is when they talk about systematic racism, to me, this fits the category because you're talking about systems designed that specifically exclude Black people from opportunity, freedom, and possibility. Around the mid 1660s, various colonies picked up the Maryland Edict or the doctrine of exclusion and expanded it into enslavement laws for people of African descent. So other states started to pick up what Maryland had done. Once established, the laws became the basis for a national public policy on the exploitation of blacks that was passed on from generation to generation through social customs and public laws. The slave codes of 1705 required that all individuals, churches, businesses, organizations, schools, and all levels of government to teach, justify, and enforce the status of blacks as, quote, a subordinate, excluded, non-competitive, non-compensated, managed workforce for the personal comfort and wealth building of white society. This public policy remained in effect until the late 1960s and probably is still in effect right now. Let me read it again. The slave codes of 1705 required all individuals, churches, businesses, organizations, and schools to teach, justify, and enforce the status of blacks as, pay attention now, listen, a subordinate, excluded, non-competitive, non-compensated, managed, aka controlled workforce for the personal comfort and wealth building of white society. Subordinate, excluded, non-competitive. A subordinate, excluded, non-competitive. So you're pushed down, pushed out, you can't compete, you're not compensated. That means you build no wealth. How many times have I explained to y'all that building black wealth would be easy if you just stop building so much wealth for other people? You have been designed, you have been engineered, you have been made into the original artificial intelligence. They programmed you like ChatGPT. You were programmed to become a wealth building machine for white society. That's how they programmed you. They put the battery in your back. So when you look around, what do you see? You see everybody building wealth that's not in the black community. Why? Well, because for hundreds of years, you've been trained generation after generation to be a subordinate, excluded, non-competitive, non-compensated, managed workforce. So they want to manage you. They're not going to compensate you, and they don't want you competing with them for opportunities. So if you look around, that's what you see. The children come out of school, the children can't compete. They're all looking for jobs for white people. They're like, who's my master going to be? I need a boss. They're not looking to be the boss. They're looking for the boss. They're not looking to drive the bus. They're looking for the back seat of the bus. That's where we're supposed to be. They can't even fathom. They can't even imagine. You better not even imagine owning the bus. You better not imagine driving the bus. You better not even pretend like you think you can actually compete. So in many cases, our economic consciousness is very, very low. We're looking for the paycheck. Nobody's looking for the power. Nobody's looking to say, how do I actually own this business? Everybody's looking to say, how do I get a position to work for the business? Or maybe I can manage the business on behalf of the person who owns the business. Ownership is not even a concept in a lot of families. I can tell you the truth. In my family, we didn't go into a business and think, who owns this or how do you buy this business? That wasn't even in our realm of reality. We weren't even processing that. The best you could hope for is that you end up being managed by somebody else. So my point is to say that in order for you to talk about freedom, you got to operate on a freedom frequency. You got to elevate. Freedom is on the top floor of the building. Freedom is not in the basement. So if you start in the basement, if your mind is in the basement, if your frequency is on level 1 and freedom is on level 10, then you shouldn't really talk about freedom because freedom doesn't live where you're at. Love don't live here anymore, right? So what I say is that when you talk about how we raise kids in this generation, how B1 people raise children, you got to raise them on the freedom frequency. You don't start in the basement and work your way up. You helicopter them into the penthouse at the top. Freedom is in the sky. The sky is high. You must operate on that level in terms of your thinking. What does that mean? Let me make it concrete for you. When you're talking about participating in the economic system, you must have a standard by which you expect to participate. You can expect to participate as an employee or as someone's slave, where you then become what was the word here? Subordinate, because the employee will never have more power than the boss. Excluded, because they don't want your black ass in the office anyway, and you'll be the last hired, first fired. Non-competitive, kids coming out here can't read, can't write, but they can twerk all day and bust raps and play basketball, but can't nobody do no math and truly compete. Not even trying to own nothing. Non-compensated, your wealth is going down. Black wealth is not going up, it's going down, even though you work the hardest. Managed workforce. How many black leaders do you see that are simply there to manage black people? How many Negroes do they have on speed dial that they'll call on the bat phone whenever black people get out of line? They'll call up the Al Sharptons of the world and they'll say, calm this guy down, calm this Negro down. I know this up close. And I mentioned Sharpton in particular because I remember a time where I said something. I used to actually, I was invited into the club for maybe about 6 months until they realized that I'm not that guy, right? And I remember being in the club and I remember I said something that upset some people and somebody called him up. And next thing you know, he's calling me up. And I said, okay, I get it. You're managing me, but you don't understand. You can't manage me because I'm not meant to be managed by anybody. So ultimately, managed workforce. So they see your power, they see your greatness, they see your value, but they need to manage that so they can control their energy and make sure that it achieves the goal. What's the goal? The personal comfort and wealth building of white society. So look at how many things you and I do every day that contributes to the wealth of white society. Number one, we're trained to be consumers. You get $1, your goal is to spend it. Where are you going to spend it? You ain't spending at black businesses, you're going to the white man's business. So he's getting rich off your dollars that you work for. You work for the dollar, he benefits from it. Number two, when you get up and you go to work every day, where are you going? You're going to go spend 40 hours building somebody else's business. Why do you do that? Well, because that's what you were trained to do, right? So they're benefiting, their businesses are growing because of that. What else? Number three, let's say you're looking for a place to live. Well, a lot of us rent our property. And who's our landlord? Landlord, in many cases, is some white guy. We're paying him rent. He's taking that money, transferring it into generational wealth. He's taking that money, he's investing it. You're just working hard enough to get money to pay rent and buy stuff so that you then run out of money. So then you have to go back to work to get enough money so you can keep paying rent and keep buying stuff. So you're the hamster on the wheel. That's the point. You're running, and you're gonna run until you just drop dead on the hamster wheel. And there's no plan, there's no consciousness to say, okay, running is cool, but at some point you gotta stop running. At some point, you got to, my buddy Killer Mike, he has a great song called Run, Nigga, Run, right? It's like, nigga, when you going to stop running? You running, you've been working for 30, 40, 50 years. At some point, all this energy that you're producing should produce some type of wealth that allows you to stop running. At the very least, your children should not be having to run as hard as you ran because you done did all the running. You ran 30 or 40 years. They shouldn't have to run the way you ran because that means there's no progress. How is it that newborn babies are born in the hospital with a higher net worth than people who've been working for 40 or 50 years? That don't make no sense. You've been working hard. You should not have a net worth that's less than a newborn baby. Even if you think about educated Negroes like us educated black folks. I saw a stat the other day, and it was really interesting. We often applaud, rightfully so, the fact that black women have more degrees than almost anybody else. Black women are quick to go to school, get that master's, get that bachelor's, get that second bachelor's, get that second master's. Love it all. Amazing, extraordinary. But here's the downside of that. Black women are saddled with more student loan debt on a per capita basis than any other group in America. And so what I say to you is I'm not here to shame you for having your student loans at all. I'm not, because I had student loans. No shame in that. My question is, are you sure that this debt is going to eventually, this negative net worth is going to turn into a positive net worth before you're done? Or did you work your butt off just so you could die in debt and have your actual family wealth go down as opposed to going up? Did you think about what wealth actually means, what that looks like? Wealth is measured primarily through net worth. That's assets minus liabilities. So again, not to throw a wrench in anybody's economic plan. I'm not here to say that. I'm here to say, let's think about the bigger picture. Working hard is important, but accumulation is the key. You're working hard to accumulate something. You should have something to show for it. For example, ideally speaking, if you worked your ass off in 2015, you should be able to show me something that you now possess, other than life experience, that is an artifact of the fact that you worked so hard in 2015. But that requires consciousness. Consciousness means targeting. That means that similar to the way they were consciously targeting and controlling the direction of our energy to make sure that we're pouring into their bucket, we must also be conscious about ensuring that our energy pours into our bucket. Are you pouring into the black bucket? Are you pouring into your family's bucket? Or are you just pouring into anybody's bucket who gets to control you? So if you want to know what the goal is, what the if you I mean the goal is, this ain't got to be hard. This is not complex. If you want to know the goal of the All Black National Convention is to say, how do we take everything we got and make sure we're pouring into our bucket? The goal is simple. We're there to say, Black community is number one. That's the most important community to ever exist. Our families matter more than anybody else's families. We want our people to do better. We're pouring into our buckets. That means bring your scientists, bring your doctors, bring your lawyers, bring your plumbers, bring your electricians, bring your school teachers, and let's figure out how to pour into the bucket. What's your bucket? And if you don't know what your bucket is, figure out what it's supposed to be. You're not here to pour into everybody else's bucket. A lot of y'all do that. You pour so much into everybody else, but you pour nothing into yourself. You pour nothing into even in your own family, not in a way that's gonna lead to something generational. We work too hard not to be independent, secure, and self-reliant. We work too hard for that. So you know how to work hard. The next step for all of us is to figure out, well, what does it mean to work smart? Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. I had to spend a moment on that point because I really want you to understand that. Pour into your bucket. Your family has a bucket. Go find it. Pour into the damn thing. If you ain't got a family and you're young enough to make one, go make one. Or if you're too old to make one, go build one. Go find people that want to be part of your family and pour into that bucket. Legacy, institutionalize things. That's how you build wealth. That's how you get power. Every institution in America, every multi-billion-dollar institution in America ain't nothing but a bucket that somebody poured into consistently. Pour into your damn bucket. Woo, this is good. Man, Dr. Claude, I love this man. I mean, can we just talk about how much we love? I'm reading ahead, and I'm like, I was gonna stop, but I gotta keep. Okay, this is good. All right. Okay. So, all right. So here's what Dr. Anderson says. He says the wave of computerized technology that began in the 1960s rendered marginalized Black labor to be obsolete. It established a new public policy that maintained the inequalities between the races, absolved members of the majority society from feeling any guilt or accepting responsibility for what had happened to Black people, and categorically denied support to public policy or programs that would shift control and ownership of wealth and power resources from whites to Blacks. Now, the reason I was just sitting here like laughing because this next section is a trip. He says, why were Blacks the preferred slaves? It says here, this is page 44 of the book Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. You can go to powernomics.com if you want to get a copy. Powernomics.com. All right. It was not by simple chance that the Black race was selected for enslavement. It resulted from a process of elimination. Europeans were not interested in enslaving members of their own race. Asians were protected by geographical barriers. Indians refused to be enslaved, indicating a willingness to die first. What group was left? Blacks. The Catholic Church recommended blacks because they felt one black slave was worth 3 or 4 Indian slaves. More specifically, African blacks were selected and effectively enslaved for at least 5 reasons. One, they had an agricultural history based upon an extended family work system. Number two, they lacked a broad sense of community based on skin color and were divided along the lines of tribalism, could not stick together. Number three, they were simultaneously invaded and enslaved by every religious denomination, national government, ethnic, and racial group. Four, they lacked guns and exploding powder. And number five, their internal disposition allowed them to accept enslavement. So you accept slavery better than anybody else. All right. This combination of factors set the stage for African blacks to become the chosen people for enslavement. So you had an agricultural history, so they could farm. They didn't have a sense of community, which is one of the things that I encourage you to build, become a part of a community. Three, they were simultaneously invaded and enslaved by every religious denomination, national government, ethnic, and racial group. Four, they had no guns. Five, they just accepted slavery. We were quick to say, oh, we got no choice. Okay, you got me. I'll be your slave. All right, interesting. The Native Americans said, you're going to have to kill me first. We said, well, I don't want to die, so I guess I have no choice. So anyway, let's see here. All right, so here's what he writes in terms of how slaves were conditioned. And I want you to connect this to what we see today, right? And just how this affects how we think now. Historical documents contain countless references by whites to what they construed as an ideal slave attitude and behavior. The question so often asked is this: since most slavery was not a voluntary state, how or what did white society do to make all blacks act alike and accept slavery? In 1996, Charles M. Christian, in his book, Black Saga, The African American Experience, offers his readers a look at how blacks were conditioned. He describes the steps that, quote, seasoning sites in the West Indies used to break in newly kidnapped slaves. Slave conditioning sites taught blacks their place, status, future, and acceptable behavior patterns. Slave traders and slaveholders often consulted with experts who successfully conditioned blacks and were able to keep them helpless and dependent. A properly conditioned slave, it was argued, would never break the psychological chains placed in his mind. So slavery starts up here. You must liberate yourself here. Christian listed the following steps in the conditioning process of a slave. So pay attention. I want you to see if you know anybody who might need some help. Step number one, establish and maintain strict discipline to engender unconditional submission. So I guess force him into submission, have strict discipline, like your boss telling you if you don't show up for your job at 9 a.m., you're going to get fired. Step two, create a sense of personal inferiority. You need to learn that the white man's ice is colder. We still do tend to believe that. That's what the whole integration scam was all about. We got integrated and we were happy. We always talk about like, well, look at how much progress we've made since integration. And I'm like, well, how much progress did we make? Our wealth has not gone up. Our families are not more stable. Our kids are not being better educated. So what progress are you talking about? Well, we're closer to white folks, so that makes us better. Three, instill fear in the mind. We got a lot of scared Negroes running around. Whole lot of fear. Fear is quite prominent. Number four, teach the slave to see the world only through the eyes of the master. That's really interesting. A lot of black folks didn't think I knew what I was talking about until they found out I was validated by a big white university, right? When I say, oh, I was on the faculty of Syracuse University for 12 years, it's like, oh, so you're legitimate, right? So okay, let's see. Number five, reconstruct the slave to be a helpless and perfectly dependent individual. Reconstruct the slave to be a helpless and perfectly dependent individual. And what that makes me think about is how many people will get mad at me when I simply say, I think we can do this ourselves. I think we can build our own institutions. I think we can be self-reliant. And woo, people get violently angry. Even when I talked about investing, when I would first start talking about it, I would say, well, we can invest in the stock market too. Oh, people would get angry. People hate solutions. They hate plans of action. They love it. There are people that will sit there and they'll do a whole puppy choir with you if you want to sit and whine and moan about how evil white people are. Like, oh, let me tell you what they did. Oh, they hurt my feelings. Oh, yeah, they so mean to us. Right? They'll do a whole puppy choir with you on that. But when you actually say, well, maybe we can actually do something ourselves. Maybe we can actually build it ourselves. There are people that will get angry about that because it's so foreign to their mind. They're like, no, we can't. Wait, what are you talking about? So this comes from slavery. That's a slave mentality. That fear that keeps you from jumping out and starting a business or trying to do something different that comes from slavery. In fact, if you look at the percentages of each community in terms of who becomes entrepreneurs and who doesn't, Black people, African Americans are way down here because they have fear of risk taking. Investing requires confronting risk, and we in that fear is instilled in us. So we have to work through the fear. So that's why in the Black Business School we created the Black Financial Therapy Department because I said, okay, our people need therapy, and we have the best therapists in the country right there on board that are helping us get that done. So this is going to require holistic effort. It's going to be multi-generational. There's work that we will begin that will be continued over the next 100, 200 years by other people. And our goal right now is to just do our best because it took a long time for us to become who we are. And it's going to take a long time for us to become who we're supposed to be. Okay. So be patient, keep pushing every day, try to be a little bit better. And that's how you can achieve things. Donna's asked me to do the puppy choir again. They look at what they did to us again. They coming out. They always shooting us. If Trump gets elected, we all gonna die. I can't do that much whining. I'm sorry. I know we all voted for different people and all that, but that's what it feels like. It's like Lord Jesus, like we just I don't want to sit around and whine with you all day. I get it. I believe you. Okay, these people are mean to us, but do you love yourself? It doesn't matter if the world's mean to you if you love yourself. You got all the love that you need. So practice love, love yourself, love each other, support each other, believe in each other. And that's what's going to make you great. That's what's going to make us as great as we need to be. All right. So before I go, a couple of reminders. Number one, Marcus Small, the director of the Melanin Code. It took a code to enslave us. The Melanin Code gives us a code that will liberate us. And so if you are on code and you want to see this film, it's an amazing film. He's going to show it for free for Black Business School students on Friday. And so if you want to join us, make sure you're on the text list for this class. Text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. I'll invite you to class tomorrow. I'll also invite you to view the Melanin Code with us Friday night. Kabibi is asking for someone to call her. So I know that Rianne, I know you're in there. So Rianne, if you could pass Kabibi's message on to the team, I'd appreciate that. Good to see you, Miss Kabibi. She's out in Seattle. She is a great lady, and she has an extraordinary career. And I went out to Seattle, and I'm gonna tell you, Black Seattle has some amazing people out there, and I really had a wonderful time. Also, the All Black National Convention is August 21st to the 23rd. If you want to join us at the convention, you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's the gathering spot. That's the family reunion. We're gonna get together, make plans, learn a whole lot. We're gonna have experts on everything from relationships to artificial intelligence. AI is gonna be big. It's gonna wipe out millions of jobs. I want you to be ready. And so we have strategies on that. We have experts that can help you with that part. And last but not least, in case you don't know, I do have a podcast on Spotify called the Dr. Boyce Breakdown. So if you go to Spotify, look up my name. I have a couple of podcasts there, one on stock market investing, and the other one's just me talking about whatever economic issue pops into my brain. And you can feel free to follow me on Spotify as well. So anyway, God bless you. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for